right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. And the finals for the 2025 Pittsburgh Pro just wrapped up for Men's Open Bodybuilding and Classic Physique. We're going to talk about Men's Open Bodybuilding first because I think this is the big story of the day. Derek Lunsford pulled out the victory in Pittsburgh. I was actually pretty surprised by this. Nick Walker in second, Martin Fitzwater in third, William Bonac in fourth, Michael Krizo in fifth. So third, fourth, and fifth went how I thought they were going to go. 1 and 2 did not. Now, the interesting part about this was they said they did something that's never been done before, which was a sudden death judging with just Nick and Derek at the finals because they were tied, is what Bob said, because they were tied at finals. So to me, that could only mean that Nick had won prejudging by 1 point, and then Derek turned around and won finals by 1 point, which would put them at a tie, which was the point of that sudden death, that extra call-out that they did at the beginning of finals, which they say they've never done before. So this must have been a really, really close competition. I do think that Nick looked better at prejudging than he did at finals, specifically his midsection. But I still thought that Nick was going to pull this out and win this show. I really did. When I was watching the comparisons at finals, I was looking at Derek's face. And Derek's face looked like he was lacking that confidence, that smile, that swagger, like he had at the Arnold. Like I feel like at the Arnold, Derek knew he was winning. And I feel like at this show during the finals, Derek had a different look on his face. Like he knew that Nick was ahead. So Nick must have been winning prejudging, and we'll know for sure when we see the scorecards. I'll probably do a video about the scorecards tomorrow. So Nick must have won prejudging by 1 point. Derek must have won finals by 1 point, and that would have put them at a tie. And that was the point of the sudden death, which Derek must have won that sudden death, giving Derek the victory. Now, I'm very, very interested to read the comments on this video and read the comments on Instagram and stuff too, because I don't think this was the result that a lot of people were expecting. I could hear the crowd reacting to the decision. It seemed like they disagreed with it as well. I don't know, man. I really thought Nick was going to win this. I really thought, especially at prejudging, that Nick had it. I think the scorecards are probably going to reflect that. I think Nick definitely won prejudging, and Derek must have clutched it at the finals. But, you know, like I said, I feel like Derek wasn't as sharp as he was at the Arnold. I feel like his lower body was not as full as it was at the Arnold. I still think he looked better than the Olympia, but I thought that this was one of the best versions of Nick that we've seen in a very long time. His size was overwhelming here. His conditioning was on point. And I feel like when Nick really brings it and he's 100% on point, he's undeniable. I think maybe the only thing, if we had to find a reason, if this was the case that Nick won prejudging and Derek won finals, which I'm assuming it is, I think at finals, Nick's midsection was starting to show a little bit more, especially in the transitions. He has great control over it, and he had better control of it at prejudging. But I feel like maybe that's the thing that lost him the show at the finals, because it seemed like at finals it was slipping a little bit, and maybe that's what gave Derek the edge. But I'm not going to lie to you guys. I am really surprised by this. I was watching these finals thinking, this is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see Bob introduce Nick as the winner and interview Nick as the winner after, you know, the back and forth that Bob and Nick had, with Bob saying he's going to be the guy announcing Nick in 8th at the Olympia. I thought that would have been a nice moment had Nick won this show, the interview with Bob. And I still think even Derek looked surprised when they announced him as the winner, because, like I said, all throughout the finals, to me, Derek didn't have that, like, confident swagger, that look on his face. And I'm curious now what this means for the New York Pro. Is Nick going to do New York? I'm assuming he probably will. But does this mean Derek will do New York? I think probably not, because this was really close between Nick and Derek. And this almost was a mistake for Derek, in the sense that it would have really diminished his momentum. If he lost this show to Nick, the conversation would be completely different, because Derek beating Sampson at the Arnold was one of the biggest moments for Derek's career, one of the biggest momentum swings, and it made him the favorite going into the Olympia. And I think now, winning Pittsburgh, even if it was a controversial decision, which I think the comments are going to reflect that, I'm very interested to read them. but I think he's still the favorite going into the Olympia. But had Nick won this show, which I really thought he was going to, that would have been, bodybuilding fans would have been feasting at that point going into the Olympia, because Derek beat Samson, the reigning Mr. Olympia. And then if Nick beat Derek, then going into the Olympia, it's like, who's the favorite? There's like no clear front runner. It could be anybody. But I guess now, Derek has the Triple Crown. Well, not yet, because he hasn't won the Olympia this year, but winning they're calling, if you win Pittsburgh, you win the Arnold, and you win the Olympia, you got the Triple Crown. But now Derek has won 2 of the 3. Does this mean that Derek is the official favorite going into the Olympia? I just don't think that Derek was as dominant at this show as we thought he was going to be. And that's what surprised me about these placings, because like I said, the other placings went how I expected them to go. Martin in 3rd, Bonac in 4th, Crizzo in 5th, even though there was like a weird thing with Crizzo where he showed up late for the finals. I don't know what the deal was with that. Like, they called him out, I think in the 2nd or 3rd call out, whatever it was, and Crizzo wasn't even there, so I don't know what the deal was with that. But man, this show really did deliver. It was as exciting as I thought it was going to be, and man, I'm just happy for Nick either way. This was a hell of a comeback for Nick. He looked incredible here. The size that he had was just so overwhelming. And he was on. His conditioning was good. He had good midsection control. He looked way better, in my opinion, than the last time that we saw him on stage. And to me, even though Nick lost this show, I still think this is a win for him. He still has proven he's one of the best bodybuilders in the world, because I do think he beat Derek at prejudging for sure. And I think that means that Nick is still in this mix. And I think a lot of people probably think that Nick should have won this show. Man, I think Nick still proved a lot of people wrong, even though he didn't win this show. So this did go the way I predicted before prejudging, which was Derek in 1st, and Nick in 2nd, and Martin in 3rd. But then after prejudging, I had Nick winning, so I changed my predictions. But man, this was surprising after seeing prejudging for sure. And I definitely will do a scorecard recap tomorrow, because I'm very curious to see how that sudden death judging round that they say they've never done before, I'm curious to see how that is reflected numerically in the scores. That was a very interesting thing that I've never seen before, and I wonder what that means. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I do think it must mean that Nick won prejudging by a point, Derek won finals by a point. That would put them at a tie. And then the sudden death thing, I guess, would be just another point added to the loser. So when the scorecards come out, I would assume this would still be considered a 1-point decision if it was tied going into that sudden death. And I do look forward to seeing the Tyler Mannion recap of why this decision went the way that it did, because I had this 6 poses to 2 in favor of Nick. The 2 poses that I gave to Derek were the abs and thighs in the front lat spread. Because I thought Derek's midsection, his taper just looked better in the abs and thighs, and I think he had a better front lat spread than Nick. And I had this video kind of planned out because I thought that Nick was going to win, and I was even going to make the argument that Nick might be one of the first people to beat Derek in the back poses. I've been saying, building up to this show, that Nick has one of my favorite back double biceps in the IFBB. And I think at this show, you could make the argument that Nick might be one of the first people to beat Derek in the back poses, especially at prejudging. When you looked at that back double bicep, I had Nick actually beating Derek in the back double. His back double looked crazy. His size, his detail, his condition. And that's a big thing, because typically every show that Derek does, Derek is unbeatable in the back pose. And don't get me wrong, Derek has a fantastic back, and most of the time I agree with that. But I thought that this was going to be a turning point for Nick, because I thought you could make the argument Derek beat Nick, or Nick beat Derek from the back in at least one of those 2 back poses. So 6-2, I had Nick in the front double. I definitely had Nick in the most muscular. I had Nick in the side chest. I had Nick in the side tricep. I had Nick in the back double. Actually, I guess we'll say 5-2. I think I would still give Derek the back lat spread. I'm sorry, 5-3, because I think I would still give Derek the back lat spread, even though I think it was close because Nick looked super wide from the back. I mean, this was one of the best Nicks I've ever seen. Big as a house, conditioned, detailed. It was just an overall, still, I think, a win for Nick. This is a big moment for Nick, even pushing Derek like that. But I'm very curious to read these comments. I just took a glance at Instagram while I'm recording this, and it doesn't seem like people generally agree with this decision. But I guess, yeah, I'd say 5-3, not 6-2. So Nick in the front double, most muscular, side chest, side tricep, back double bicep, and then I'd give Derek the abs and thighs, which maybe you give to Nick because Derek was downsized in the lower body, but I liked his midsection better in that pose. So abs and thighs, front lat spread, back lat spread to Derek. So I'm definitely curious to hear what you guys think in the comments below. Did you think Nick should have won? Did you think Derek should have won? And if you thought Derek should have won, tell me why. I want to know your pose breakdown of what poses you would give to Derek, what poses would you give to Nick. Did you think Derek was bigger than Nick? Did you think Derek was more conditioned than Nick? Kind of explain why you had it that way. Because I can't really wrap my head around what would have given it to Derek. Let's say even if you were generous and if you gave Derek another pose, which would make it a tie, what pose would you give Derek that Nick, maybe the side tricep? So if you gave Derek the side tricep, which I think Nick is better from the side, that would make it 4-4. But then Derek would have to win another pose to beat Nick. So if it were 4-4 and Nick would still have the front double bicep, the back lat spread, the most muscular, and the side chest, I guess maybe the argument would be giving Derek also the back double bicep pose. And then it would be 5-3. So I would imagine in Tyler Mannion's recap, that might be the breakdown. If it's 5-3 in favor of Derek as far as the mandatory poses, Nick would have to have the front double bicep. Nick would have to have the most muscular. Nick would have to have the side chest. And maybe it's that back double that was the swing that they gave to Derek, even though I had it Nick. But moving on, let's get to Classic Physique. And this also seemed to be controversial based on some of the comments, but in Classic Physique, Rough Diesel ended up beating Jose Ma. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but this seemed to be kind of controversial as well. I don't think this was the Rough Diesel we expected to see. I still think it was a very good version of Rough Diesel, but he wasn't as tight and conditioned as I thought he would be here. I personally think he was still the better embodiment of Classic Physique with his structure and with his flow, and obviously he did enough to win here. But then when you looked at Jose, he was more muscular, which I think has a lot to do with his height because his weight limit was higher, his weight limit cap was higher, and he was more conditioned, but I didn't think he flowed as well as Terrence did. And also, he's never placed anywhere near where Terrence has placed at the Olympia. So I still think Terrence deserved to win, and he did win. But I think in the eyes of a lot of fans, that was another controversial call because I definitely saw a lot of comments that thought Jose was going to win, saying it was kind of a coin toss of a decision. So definitely an interesting show in that sense. I think to a lot of people for both categories, the winner, I think you could make the argument, was a controversial winner. And we already know Rough Diesel said in his acceptance speech that he was going to do the New York Pro. I'm hoping that we see Nick do New York. I'm assuming he will because now this means that Nick still has to qualify for the Olympia. I'm doubting that Derek will do the New York show. Like I said, it was so close between Nick and Derek. I don't think that Derek is going to risk going to New York and potentially losing to Nick because let's be honest here. He came very close to losing to Nick at this show. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I think this is definitely going to be a hotly debated competition. But overall, I think it still really delivered. The Pittsburgh, this was one of the most enjoyable shows that I think we're going to see for the rest of the year outside of the Olympia. This was super enjoyable. These guys brought it. This was a great top two. And congratulations to Derek. I don't want to take anything away from his victory, but I genuinely am surprised that Nick didn't win this show. This one definitely caught me off guard. When they announced the winner, I thought for sure Bob was going to say Nick Walker. I was really surprised when he said Derek, and I still think the look on Nick's face and the look on Derek's face when they announced Derek the winner, both of them, I think, look surprised at that decision. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys, appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.